Hello to my Boundless friends. I'm Bethany Kempfert from Boundless LLC, Myofascial Release and Physical Therapy. I'm coming to you today to talk about rib mobility and lung expansion. Those two go hand in hand, so let's talk about that for just a little bit. In normal, healthy breathing, the way that breathing works is that our diaphragm muscle, which is this little kind of bubble-shaped muscle here at the bottom of our rib cage, when that contracts and it spreads out like this, it spreads our lungs. It spreads our ribs. And our ribs have an intricate connection to our lungs. So as our ribs expand because of that muscle contraction and some other breathing muscle contractions in our ribs and upper chest, then what happens is the lungs get pulled outward with the ribs, and it creates open space, what we call negative pressure within the lungs, and that open space creates a vacuum that sucks the air in. So it isn't a matter of us sucking the air in, with muscle effort. It's a matter of that expansion of the ribs pulling the lungs and then just drawing the air in to the lung space. So when we think about how do we have our most healthful lungs that are capable of drawing in air easily and readily, we really have to consider our rib mobility. That's an important part of our lung capacity. So these few exercises are exercises to help enhance your rib mobility so that you can also enhance your breathing. Now, I have to be really careful during this time when we're all dealing with and fearful of the coronavirus. I have to be really careful to say that these exercises will not prevent illness, nor will they necessarily guarantee that you won't have complications from illness. Everybody's bodies are individual. They have their own unique medical histories and life histories. But I can say that the more healthful your lungs are, the better capable your body is to fight any illnesses that do come upon it. And I will also say that if somebody has dealt with either a simple cold or pneumonia or something like that, that sometimes these sorts of exercises can be very, very important as part of the recovery process. But I also would say that, again, when somebody is dealing with more complex medical situations, in that case, it is better to be coached one-on-one so that any ways that any unique issues that come up can be addressed. So those are kind of my disclaimers that go with this. So let's go back to talking a little bit about that rib mobility. A simple exercise that you can do to start to help your rib mobility a little bit is if you have enough shoulder mobility to come here and put your hands on your lower rib cage. I just want you to take a couple of breaths where you feel your ribs expand and your ribs move down. Each time, you're going to follow that motion with your hands. So that motion that you're feeling is there's really two types of rib motion that we talk about. That type of movement that goes out like this and down is what we call bucket handle rib mobility. So the bucket handle rib mobility is if you think about having a bucket here and your handle sitting, on the edge of that bucket, the handle can move up and down like that. And so that's that kind of movement here that happens with the rib cage moving out and in and out and in. If we think about the front and the back, so for that you'd have to come a little bit higher. You'd have to kind of come to where your ribs come into your sternum. And back here, let's breathe a couple times and feel the motion that happens here. So this is a little different type of movement. The movement from the front is what we call pump handle motion. So if you imagine my body being one of those old-fashioned water pumps, the motion that happens here is kind of like this pump handle coming out and the pump handle coming in. Pump handle coming out, pump handle coming in. And that's kind of more of this movement that happens with the sternum and where the ribs are connected into that sternum. So even just doing these couple of things that we did, with your hands on your ribs and your hands here on the front, creates a little bit of an awareness of that expansion. And awareness is the beginning of typically improving your function. And if you're like me and you have a tendency to have given just a little bit of resistance to that breathing, that has already become a strengthening exercise for your rib expanding muscles and for your and therefore for your breathing. Now, if you had trouble doing what I just did, maybe your shoulders don't let you go up there. Another little tool that I sometimes use is just some kind of a belt. This is just simply a robe belt. And you can do the same thing that I did with my hands, essentially with a belt. So if you take a belt around your low rib cage and just lightly cross it over and take up the slack. What I want you to do for a couple of breaths when you try this on your own is feel how the ribs expand and kind of push that belt outward, and then take up the slack lightly as you exhale again. So this is another exercise, again, that can increase awareness, or if you give just a little bit of a light tug with that band, you can actually give yourself some resistance to breathing that can make it a little bit of a strengthening exercise for your breathing muscles. Now, this is another disclaimer point that I'm going to give you. Anytime we start thinking about breathing, we kind of take it off of autopilot. Now, our autopilot is for breathing is very, very effective because it monitors a lot of different things like oxygen levels, the demand for oxygen in our body, carbon dioxide levels. Are we getting rid of enough of that old air? When we start thinking about breathing, we aren't necessarily letting our autopilot choose our breathing pattern based on all that information. So anytime you do breathing exercises, if you notice you start to feel a little bit lightheaded, just a little bit anxious, any of those sorts of feelings, give yourself a little bit of time to stop thinking about breathing and just breathe in whatever pattern feels natural to you. I will say it is typically ideal that your exhale is a little bit longer than your inhale. And there are a lot of breathing techniques that use specific counts, like breathe in for 3 and breathe out for 6. But again, some of those things will not feel suitable to you. So I typically tell people just that your exhale should be a little longer than your inhale. Otherwise, try to let your body be your guide for what rhythms feel comfortable to you. Okay, so this little exercise, again, you can do this kind of a little higher, a little lower. If you come way up here on the top of your chest, you'll notice you might not expand as much as you expand down here. But again, you can work on improving that amount of expansion by being aware of it with this little tool. Okay. One more little set of exercises I'm going to do, and then that'll be all we'll cover for today. The other thing is where your arms are influence how much and in what areas your ribs can expand. So we can actually use arm movement also to enhance our ability to expand our ribs in certain areas. So for example, if I take my right arm up here, I'm going to open this part of my rib cage. And since our rib cage is connected on the two sides, if I'm opening this side of my rib cage, I have closed this side of my rib cage. So by working with one arm up, I'm going to selectively mobilize the ribs on one side. And since, of course, those ribs are connected into our lungs, then I'm going to selectively help one side of the lung to expand further than the other. So, for example, what I'm going to do here with my right arm is I'm going to reach up to the ceiling with my inhale and then come back down. Now, some people have shoulder problems. You might only be able to go a little ways. You might have to keep your arm in certain positions. Always respect what your own limitations are in regards to any exercises. So again, breathing in. Feel that expansion. Breathing in. You can do that on the other side. Feel that expansion. I think it can be very beneficial to work one side and then the other, but then we can also come back and realize that if we bring both arms up, we're going to selectively allow a little more expansion through the lungs as a whole. So for that, let's bring both arms up. Now, if we bring our arms a little more to the back, we won't even worry about the up part. If we bring our arms a little more to the back, we're going to open up the ribs a little more in the front. So let's do that. We're going to start here and bring our arms a little bit up into the back. All right. Now, there's another area that we typically do not think about our ribs expanding, and that is on the back side. So our ribs connect to the sternum in the front, and they come around and they attach into the spine. And our ribs should be able to expand in the front, the sides, and the back in those different motions that we talked about before. So to work a little bit more on expanding the back, we may want to think about collapsing the front so that the back can more selectively engage. So the exercise we just did was breathing in here, but now what I'm going to have you do is reverse that. We're going to breathe in as we cross our arms over in front. So here we go. Now, as you do that, your back is going to round out just a little bit. I want you to feel for how your ribs are expanding and filling in the back. I'm going to turn so you can see that a little bit. So breathing in as we cross over in front. And then out. And breathe in. So again, that is an important area to focus on as well, is that getting that breath in through the back. So that's where we're going to stop for today. And I just want you to play around with a couple of these ideas because that can help you to enhance your lung filling capacity by enhancing that rib mobility. And especially if any of you are recovering, just know that you might have to modify some of these things, but that is, again, an especially important time to continue to think about your rib mobility and being able to fully expand those lungs. I hope this all finds you healthy and happy, and have a great day.